At my mother's funeral, my father brought home his illegitimate daughter. She looked sweet and innocent, all soft smiles and gentle gestures. I let out a cold laugh, glancing back at my younger brother standing behind me. His eyes held a dangerous gleam, his entire presence radiating something dark and threatening. I walked over to him and whispered, so only he could hear, "Take it easy, don't kill her. At least leave me something to work with." It was at Dad's birthday party when someone slipped something into my drink. When I came to, my hands and feet were bound, and I was facing several burly strangers. They leered at me with disgusting grins, their eyes full of vile intentions. My voice shaking, I told them I was the daughter of Sterling Corporation's CEO, that if they let me go, my father would pay them handsomely. They just laughed harder, grabbing my chin roughly. "The CEO's daughter? You think we got you out of that mansion and into these mountains without help? We've got your daddy to thank. Oh, and that sweet little sister of yours." I stared in disbelief, then desperately added, "I have a brother too. He's heir to the Morrison Group. He has money too." They exchanged glances and sneered, "You mean Ethan? The one who just died in that car crash?" Ethan was dead? My little brother, who used to follow me around, calling me his big sister with that sweet smile, was gone? The last thread holding my sanity snapped, and I lost all will to fight back. Suddenly, a car crashed straight through the entrance. Ethan stumbled out, covered in blood, clutching a knife. He carved his way through them until he reached me. After cutting my ropes, he held me close and said, "It's okay. I've killed everyone who deserved to die, including those two back at the Sterling house." Then he collapsed against my shoulder. That's when I saw the multiple stab wounds on his torso, blood flowing freely. I screamed for him to stay awake, but suddenly one of the men he'd cut down got back up, knife in hand, charging at us. I spun around to shield him, feeling the sharp pain tear across my back before everything went dark. I thought I heard sirens in the distance. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my bed at the family mansion. I felt completely fine, no pain anywhere. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand to check the time. The date told me I'd somehow returned to 3 years ago, the day of my mother's funeral. I shot out of bed and ran downstairs, pounding on Ethan's bedroom door. A moment later, it opened. Ethan stood there, alive and breathing. I threw my arms around him and wouldn't let go. Then I heard his trembling voice. "Claire, is it really you? Are you back too?" I was stunned. Ethan's parents had died when he was young. Our families had been close friends, so he'd practically grown up in our house. Though I was 2 years older, he'd always called me by my first name, Claire. It wasn't until Dad brought Madison home and they were planning to marry that Ethan started calling me Big Sister along with her. Tears streamed down my face as I cried. Yes, I'm back. We're both back. Thank God. After I calmed down, I asked Ethan what had really happened. That's when I learned the truth. My father, Richard Sterling, and Madison had conspired together, planning to steal all of Ethan's and my assets, and they wanted us dead. What a wonderful father and sister I had. I'd trusted them completely, working behind the scenes to manage Sterling Corp for Richard, treating Madison like a real sister despite being only half related. And this was how they repaid me. Ethan and I looked at each other in silence. I saw deep hatred in his eyes, and I knew he saw the same in mine. So let the revenge begin. This time, we'd make sure our performance was unforgettable. Today was my mother's funeral, and just like in my previous life, Madison arrived afterward. Sure enough, once the service ended, Dad brought her inside and announced she was his daughter. She hid behind him with that sweet, innocent act, looking pitiful and vulnerable. In my past life, both Ethan and I had been fooled by this facade, letting our guard down until we met our tragic end. I couldn't help but laugh coldly, turning to look at my brother behind me. His eyes held that dangerous gleam, his whole presence radiating menace. I slowly walked over to him and whispered so only he could hear, "Easy there. Don't kill her outright, leave me some fun." Ethan's lips curved slightly, a seductive glint in his eyes as he looked up. He'd inherited his parents' stunning looks, dark brows, star-like eyes, a perfect nose above naturally curved lips, tall and lean. Everyone considered him the most handsome guy in our social circle. He walked over to Madison, leaning down to say in a low voice, "Welcome to the Sterling family, Madison. I'm really looking forward to spending time with you." Richard's expression flickered as he watched Ethan thoughtfully. Ethan noticed and turned to Richard. "Uncle Richard, Madison doesn't know many people yet. Why don't I throw her a welcome party? Help her meet some people." He sounded so sincere and enthusiastic that Dad didn't suspect a thing, giving him permission to organize it. A week later, a lavish party was underway at a suburban mansion. The guest of honor was Madison herself. Ethan and I sat at the bar, watching young socialites gather around Madison, showering her with flattery. She was clearly eating it up. "So, Madison, what's your major? You've got more style than most celebrities." Madison blushed, saying sweetly, "Oh, stop. I've studied dance since I was little, so I went to performing arts college." "No wonder. Look how elegant dancers are." Unlike us, we had to study finance, law, and business from childhood, preparing to take over companies someday. "You're lucky, getting to live your own life and just enjoy the money." Everyone laughed, and Madison, stupid as she was, finally caught the mockery. Her smile froze awkwardly. I glanced at Ethan. His expression remained neutral, unreadable. Soon, someone changed the subject, and the awkward moment passed. Then, someone suggested Madison perform a dance for everyone. She wanted to show off but played coy, hesitating to take the stage. Ethan raised his glass at me with a subtle eyebrow raise, then strolled over, saying, "Are you worried we're too unsophisticated to appreciate art, Madison? You seem awfully stingy with your talents." Madison looked shocked and quickly shook her head, then walked onto the stage to dance. The stage connected to the pool area, and the surface was slippery. Madison hadn't been dancing for long when she tumbled headfirst into the water. The pool wasn't deep, but Madison couldn't swim. She lost her balance and flailed desperately in the water, begging us to save her. Ethan stood poolside, watching Madison struggle coldly while raising his glass to toast me from across the room. Everyone there was Ethan's guest, all sharp, calculating people. With the Morrison heir standing there watching coldly, who would dare jump in to help? I figured Madison had suffered enough in the water. Any longer, and someone might actually die. I nodded toward the pool, signaling Ethan it was time to rescue her. He took a sip of his drink, then nodded to someone in the crowd. The next second, a man jumped into the pool, pulling the exhausted Madison out and giving her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. At the same time, Ethan announced the party was over, and everyone left. After a while, Madison slowly opened her eyes. Ethan immediately rushed over with concern. "Madison, you scared me to death!" "I had no idea you couldn't swim." "This is all my fault." His acting was so convincing, I wondered if he'd taken secret drama classes. After helping Madison up, Ethan told her, "The man who saved you is Hunter Harrison from the Harrison family. His father is someone Uncle Richard has been trying to connect with, but never found the right opportunity. Why don't you use this life debt as an excuse to thank him personally? Uncle Richard's birthday is next month. If you could help him network with the Harrisons, he'd be thrilled." I bit my lip to keep from laughing out loud. As far as I knew, the real Hunter Harrison was currently vacationing abroad. But Madison was still naive enough to believe Ethan's story and agreed immediately. After sending Madison to rest, Ethan came back to my side. By then, I was pretty drunk, so I ruffled his hair affectionately. "Our Ethan's all grown up now, so clever. I don't need to worry about you anymore." Ethan frowned and took the glass from my hand, then carried me back to my room, gently placing me on the bed. He tucked me in, then leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Claire, we're not blood related. Stop treating me like a little brother." Then he turned and walked away, pausing at the door to add, "In 3 days, I'll have a show for you to watch." These past few days, I'd been doing what I always did, working behind the scenes to manage Sterling Corp for Richard. While Richard was my father, he had zero business sense. He'd only invested some money during my mother's startup struggles. But as far as I knew, that money was practically nothing. It was actually Uncle Morrison, Ethan's father, who really helped my mother. Even so, Mom was moved by Richard's gesture and eventually married him after her business succeeded, sharing everything with him. After Mom died, I wanted to join the company's management directly, but Richard opposed it. He claimed I was too young to command respect, suggesting I manage everything from behind the scenes until he retired and I could take over directly. I'd agreed, but now I knew how that ended. This time, I'd take back everything that was rightfully mine. I rarely saw Ethan these days. I was busy with company affairs, while he was presumably preparing for the show he'd mentioned. 3 days later, I got a text from Ethan inviting me for afternoon tea. The address was his penthouse in the West Side, a luxury property he'd bought privately through intermediaries. Besides me, no one else had ever been there. I wrapped up my work and drove over. As I pulled into his garage, I frowned. That pink sports car next to my spot was definitely Madison's. What was she doing here? Ethan met me at the car, gentlemanly opening my door and leading me to the private elevator to the penthouse. "Why is Madison here?" I asked as soon as we got in the elevator. Ethan chuckled and tilted his head. "Are you jealous?" I glared at him, and he slowly explained, "Didn't I say I had a show for you? This is my territory. No one else knows about it, so it's more convenient." That made sense. Plus, Ethan had the penthouse modified so the top floor required facial recognition for entry and exit maximum privacy. I settled onto the couch, casually pulling my long hair into a loose bun. Watching Ethan make coffee, I propped my chin on my hand and asked, "So what am I here to see?" "Don't tell me you want to show off some new latte art skills." I cracked myself up with that one. A moment later, Ethan brought over coffee and sat beside me, turning on the TV in front of us. The screen immediately displayed extremely explicit content. The sounds that followed made me blush furiously. I immediately turned away and scolded Ethan. "You're way too young to be watching this stuff, and you want to drag me into it too? Have you no shame?" He pulled my hands away from my ears, laughing. "I'm only 2 years younger than you. Besides, look carefully at who's actually on screen." At his words, I turned to look. The woman on screen was definitely Madison. "Did you drug them?" I asked, confused. Ethan wrinkled his nose in distaste, turning off the TV. "I don't use such cheap tricks. I just had Harrison give her a little taste of the good life, and she threw herself at him willingly." Harrison? Was he actually connected to the Harrison family? I'd never heard of him. Who is this guy? Isn't he someone you hired? Ethan shook his head and explained that Harrison, like Madison, was an illegitimate child. But Mrs. Harrison was sharp and powerful, so he'd never been accepted into the family. When Ethan's people found him, he was being chased by debt collectors over gambling losses. After Ethan's people paid off his debts and promised him a generous reward to approach Madison as Hunter Harrison, this scene was the result. Why go through all this trouble? Couldn't you just find any random guy? Did Ethan think this was more entertaining? A bastard and a bastard seemed like a perfect match. Ethan suddenly reached out to tuck my hair behind my ear, then said in a suggestive tone, "Madison seemed very satisfied with my arrangement. Since that's the case, I should collect some interest. After Uncle Richard's birthday party, you can start preparing to take over Sterling Corp." Though I didn't know what he had planned, it aligned perfectly with my own intentions. I just needed the right opportunity to take over Sterling Corp. So at Richard's birthday party, that opportunity delivered itself right to my door. The Sterling family mansion was hosting Richard's lavish birthday celebration. The guests included business elites, politicians, and family friends. Madison wore a pale pink strapless gown, looking elegant and charming as she mingled downstairs, making sure everyone knew the Sterling family had gained a daughter. Right on schedule, Richard appeared on stage with his wine glass, launching into a speech about his journey building Sterling Corp over the years. Listening from below, I nearly threw up. He had the audacity to claim credit for everything my mother had accomplished. After Richard finished speaking to thunderous applause, Madison took the stage. Ethan and I exchanged knowing smiles. The climax of tonight's birthday party was about to begin. Madison took the microphone and said sweetly, "Tonight is Daddy's birthday, and as his daughter, I've prepared a special gift for him." She paused dramatically, then looked at Richard and continued, "Daddy, I know you've always wanted to partner with Harrison Industries. Well, Hunter Harrison and I have become close friends, and he's even recorded a birthday message for you." So, with everyone watching expectantly, Madison turned on the projector behind her. The moment the image appeared, the crowd gasped. Madison heard the commotion and turned to look, her face immediately draining of color. Because what was showing on screen was the explicit footage I'd seen earlier at Ethan's place of her and Harrison. However, after editing, only Madison's face was clearly visible. Madison frantically tried to turn off the large screen, but nothing she pressed worked. I glanced at Ethan beside me, noticing the small remote control in his hand, and couldn't help smiling. Finally, Richard had to go on stage and smash the projector to stop the chaotic scene. Madison, pale as a ghost, grabbed the microphone to explain, "Hunter and I, we've been dating for a while now. We're in love, so we..." Before she could finish, someone strolled in fashionably late, saying disdainfully to Madison, "Funny, I had no idea when Hunter Harrison started dating some nobody bastard." The newcomer was strikingly handsome with sharp features, wearing gold-rimmed glasses and an impeccably tailored black suit. He carried himself with obvious confidence and authority. I turned to look. It was Hunter Harrison, supposedly vacationing abroad. He had no connection to our family, so why was he here? I nudged Ethan, but he just smiled without explaining. Hunter's words were blunt, and while I loved hearing them, someone else clearly didn't. Madison's face darkened as she demanded, "Who are you?" "This is between Hunter Harrison and me. What business is it of yours?" Everyone burst out laughing at that. Ethan stepped forward helpfully. "Don't you recognize him, Madison?" "He is Hunter Harrison." Only then did Madison realize she'd been sleeping with the wrong man. The shock was too much. She fainted on the spot. Richard quickly had her carried away, then approached Hunter with an embarrassed expression. "Young man, this is all a misunderstanding. My daughter is naive. She must have been deceived. Please be understanding, and I'll bring her to apologize properly another day." Hunter showed no mercy, coldly replying, "Don't bother with apologies. Like I said, bastards don't belong in polite society. Mr. Sterling, you wouldn't want one person to ruin the reputation Sterling Corp has built over decades." Without waiting for Richard's increasingly ugly expression to respond, Hunter walked straight over to me, looked me up and down, and said, "Miss Sterling, would you be free to have dinner with me?" Ethan immediately stepped forward, blocking me. "She's not available, but I'd be happy to have dinner with Mr. Harrison." Hunter adjusted his glasses, then after a moment said, "That works too." I looked at the two men glaring at each other across the table and immediately regretted following Ethan here. On the way over, I'd asked Ethan if he knew why Hunter had shown up at the Sterling house. He told me he'd invited him. The invitation wasn't a formal card, it was the video of Madison and the fake Harrison. Hunter swirled his wineglass, slowly saying, "So it seems the person who invited me wasn't Miss Sterling, but Mr. Morrison." Ethan replied, "That's right." That invitation was a bit visually offensive. "I apologize for that. But it seems you're not entirely indifferent to your family's bastard after all." Hunter didn't respond, but the murderous look in his eyes was unmistakable. Seeing the awkward tension, I lazily spoke up. "Mr. Brad Harrison, let's cut to the chase. That fake Harrison impersonated you and took advantage of my sister. If this gets out, it could seriously damage Harrison Industries' stock price. I hear you weren't vacationing abroad recently, but negotiating a major deal. If Harrison family business suffers because of this, wouldn't that be unfortunate? So why don't we..." Hunter leaned back in his chair, watching me. "Why don't we what?" I continued. "Why don't you give me the contract Richard was hoping to secure with Harrison Industries? In return, I guarantee that video will have absolutely nothing to do to your family. Fake Harrison might be worthless, but he was still the old man's son. If this scandal broke, the Harrison family would suffer too." This was exactly why Ethan had gone through all this trouble to find the fake Harrison. I watched Hunter's expression darken as he seemed to consider refusing, until he said with an amused tone, "Looks like Miss Sterling and I are the same type of people willing to sacrifice even our own siblings to achieve our goals." I laughed coldly. "You're mistaken, Mr. Harrison. It was your brother who took advantage of my sister, not the other way around." He seemed to hate the word brother, his expression immediately changing. He didn't even want to finish dinner. Before leaving, though, he agreed to my terms, promising to formalize the contract soon. My worried heart finally settled back into place. Looking at Ethan, his expression remained unreadable as always. I was in such a good mood that I pinched his cheek like when we were kids. Our Ethan really helped me out this time. "So tell me, what reward do you want?" 0, 6. Ethan thought for a moment, his lips curving slightly as he grabbed both my wrists with one hand and pulled my chair closer with the other. He leaned close to my face, his lips barely parted. I could smell the faint wine on his breath, making my heart skip a beat. I didn't dare meet his eyes. "Sister?" He paused, then continued. "Do you really like that title so much? Because if so, would you give me any reward I asked for?" That breathy sister made my whole body tingle, and I unconsciously nodded. Seeing him lean even closer, I embarrassingly closed my eyes. But nothing happened. When I opened them again, Ethan was sitting up straight with a mischievous grin. Mortified, I got up and ran, only to crash right into Hunter at the door. He was leaning casually against the doorframe, having obviously witnessed the whole scene. I frowned. "Why haven't you left yet, Mr. Harrison?" He pointed to his jacket on the chair, came back for my things. Didn't expect to catch such an interesting show. "No wonder Mr. Morrison went to such lengths to help you. Seems like his interests aren't entirely professional." Ethan brought over the jacket and handed it to Hunter. Alcohol can be dangerous, especially when it belongs to someone else. "Mr. Harrison shouldn't drink too much." These two were practically shooting daggers at each other. What a pair. After Hunter finally left, Ethan and I headed home to the Sterling mansion. The moment we walked in, Richard was sitting on the couch, clearly ready for a confrontation. I knew this was coming time for the blame game. "Your sister is in serious trouble, and you're just getting home now," Richard yelled at me. I hadn't planned to show my cards this early, but since he had the nerve to get angry, I fired back. Madison offended the Harrison heir. She might have caused trouble, but Sterling Corp can't afford to offend them. Instead of wasting time yelling at me, "Dad, maybe you should focus on controlling Madison." Richard's face darkened. How dare you speak to me like that? Your mother spoiled you rotten, gave you no manners at all." My blood boiled. How dare he mention my mother? Just as I was about to respond, Ethan beat me to it, his voice sharp with anger. Uncle Richard. Mrs. Sterling was my parents' dear friend, and she practically raised me too. Are you saying I have no manners either? Though Ethan had grown up in our house, he had the entire Morrison group backing him. Richard wouldn't dare openly offend him. Richard had to control his temper and carefully ask Ethan, I heard from Madison that you introduced her to that man. You grew up in the Sterling house. How could you deceive your own sister? You owe me an explanation. Ethan smiled. That's unfair, Uncle Richard. At the welcome party, someone from the Harrison family did come, just not Hunter, but his brother, Harrison. I guess Madison was so eager to help you make connections that she approached him herself. Then, as if remembering something, he continued, as for why she mistook one for the other, well, that I couldn't say. Before Richard could ask anything else, Ethan pulled me upstairs to our rooms. Richard was left downstairs, furious with nowhere to direct his rage, smashing things around the house. I laughed. If he couldn't handle this little setback, what would he do next? Things were about to get much worse. Originally, Richard was supposed to make another announcement today, bringing Madison into Sterling Corp's management as his assistant. Madison's eagerness to impress had backfired, causing her to release that video too early and miss this opportunity. But knowing Richard's favoritism toward her, it was only a matter of time. Sure enough, the following Monday at the company meeting, Richard posted an internal announcement appointing Madison as vice president, a position she'd parachuted into, causing quite a stir. I called Ethan. You can release it now. Soon after, Sterling Corp's new VP's sex scandal hit the trending topics. Since the video didn't show the man's face, several influencers jumped on the attention, claiming to be the guy in the footage. Some professional trolls even suggested the male was a certain celebrity, causing the incident to spiral completely out of control and Sterling Corp's stock to plummet. Of course, Ethan was pulling strings behind the scenes while I took advantage of the chaos to buy up loose shares from panicking stockholders. 6. 3 days later, the company called an emergency board meeting about the incident. Richard walked in with his prepared talking points, but I beat him to it. Seeing me at the company, he snarled, "This isn't a place for you. Get out of here right now." I laughed coldly. This is the company my mother founded. I'm also a shareholder. Why can't I be here? I nodded politely to the board members, uncles, and family friends I'd already visited personally. To prove my capabilities to them, I'd brought along the Harrison Industries contract, finally earning their support and permission to attend today's board meeting. You don't have any shares. What kind of shareholder are you? If you don't leave, I'll have security drag you out, Richard roared. I walked over to his usual seat at the head of the table and sat down calmly. Dad, I remember Mom always warned us to read documents carefully before signing anything. Why didn't you take her advice? Right now, the person here without shares is you. I threw a stack of documents in front of him. He stared in disbelief, flipping through them before collapsing into a chair. Then he suddenly turned vicious, trying to attack me, but the security guards at the door grabbed him and threw him out. Sitting in the chairman's seat, I officially announced Richard Sterling's termination from all positions at Sterling Corp, with me formally taking over the company. Then I had PR release a statement clarifying that Sterling Corp was founded by my mother, Linda Sterling, and had nothing to do with Madison. Former chairman Richard Sterling had resigned in disgrace, putting the controversy to rest. That day, I didn't return to the Sterling mansion, instead going back to my own apartment I'd purchased. I moved all my belongings there, never planning to return to that house again. What I hadn't expected was for Ethan to abandon his luxury penthouse and insist on moving in with me too. I opened a bottle of wine and handed him a glass. What happened to Madison? He swirled his wine thoughtfully. The fake Harrison ran through most of the money I gave him. When he couldn't find me, he tracked down Madison. You know how persistent gambling addicts can be. Later, I learned that under fake Harrison's threats, Madison had stolen Richard's retirement savings. When Richard discovered this, he beat her so badly she ended up in the hospital. At a time like this, how could I, as her sister, not visit? I looked at Madison lying in the hospital bed, bruised and swollen, and felt deeply satisfied. She dropped all pretense of sweet innocence, glaring at me with pure hatred. "You've been planning this since the day I came home, haven't you? Why would you do this to me? Aren't you afraid of karma?" Looking at her resentful expression, I said with amusement, "How do you know everything you're experiencing now isn't karma for what you did in a past life?" Her expression froze for a moment, then turned even more vicious. "You evil witch, just like that fake mother of yours. If it weren't for her, my mother and I wouldn't have been abandoned. Now you've used dirty tricks to beat me, and you're still putting on an act." I slapped her across the face. "Watch your mouth. If anyone's dirty here, it's you. I never used underhanded methods. Everything you're suffering is the result of your own actions. Enjoy your life with your gambling addict boyfriend." As I was leaving, I passed fake Harrison in the hallway, carrying a fruit basket to visit Madison. He was probably treating her like his personal ATM now. Sure enough, he'd barely been in there 2 minutes before I heard crashing sounds from the room. I had no interest in their drama and left. What I didn't expect was for Richard to track down my new address. When I saw him after some time apart, he looked completely haggard. The moment he saw me come home, he rushed over enthusiastically, begging forgiveness for all his past mistakes, calling me his most beloved daughter, and asking me to move back in with him. I shook off his hands in disgust. "Your most beloved daughter is in the hospital right now. Please leave immediately." Seeing my firm attitude, Richard flew into a rage and tried to hit me again, but Ethan appeared just in time to stop him. Richard slunk away in defeat. "Be careful these next few days." "I don't think he'll give up easily," Ethan warned me. I understood. Leaving Richard and Madison out there was always going to be a threat. People who've fallen from grace often try to drag others down with them. But I wouldn't give them that chance. Recently, both Ethan and I had been working long hours. I was just taking over the company and needed to prove myself, while Ethan, at my insistence, focused seriously on Morrison Group management instead of constantly hovering around me. Thanks to what seemed like Ethan's instructions to security, I hadn't encountered Richard again these past few days. Sometimes I felt like someone was following me, but I had a pretty good idea what was going on. I didn't call the police because I was waiting for them to make their move. Only then could I truly put Richard and Madison away for good. What I hadn't expected was that it would be fake Harrison who eventually kidnapped me. Fake Harrison brought me to his apartment, demanding the passwords to my family's safe and bank accounts. Looking around the tiny, rundown space, I was surprised he lived somewhere like this, considering he was supposedly a Harrison. Seeing me look around, he said, "Surprised I live in a place like this?" I frowned. This was Madison's idea, right? "You kidnap me while she gets the money? Aren't you worried she'll take the cash and run?" Fake Harrison snapped impatiently. "Stop babbling and give me those passwords. I know you and Hunter look down on her for being a bastard, but once we get the money, I'll take her away. That's better for everyone, right?" I was surprised he actually had real feelings for Madison. Looking at the knife in his hand, I laughed. "I give you the passwords. Madison gets the money. Then you kill me with that knife. 0, 6. This doesn't seem like a good deal for me." Fake Harrison replied coldly, "You're right. She did tell me to kill you after we got the money. But I'm only in this for cash, not murder. Give me the money and I won't hurt you." I felt a chill. Conspiracy to kidnap and extort that was good for about 10 years in prison. After giving him the passwords, I secretly pressed the tiny emergency beacon hidden in my sleeve. A few minutes later, instead of my rescuers, fake Harrison's phone rang first. I thought it was Madison calling to report success, but his expression changed dramatically after answering, and he stared at me with terrifying intensity. After hanging up, his eyes went bloodshot as he approached with the knife at my throat, snarling, "You played me!" I didn't understand and tried to calm him down while asking what had happened. That's when I learned Madison had also been kidnapped. Right from my apartment. I told fake Harrison this wasn't my plan. I couldn't have predicted Madison would go to my place today. If those people were originally after me, then the mastermind could only be Richard. When Ethan arrived, fake Harrison had already left. He untied my ropes, his face dark with anger the entire time. "Ethan?" I tugged gently at his sleeve. "I know I was wrong. Please don't." Before I could finish, he pulled me into a tight embrace. "Promise me you'll never put yourself in danger like that again." I felt his body trembling slightly, so I slowly rubbed his back soothingly. "Okay. Never again." After a while, I pulled back from Ethan and showed him the recording device I'd hidden on myself, filling him in on fake Harrison and Madison's situation. Richard probably never imagined those people would grab Madison instead of me when she went to get the money. Ethan snorted, "She brought this on herself." "Where's fake Harrison now?" "I think he went to find Richard." Remembering fake Harrison's expression when he left, Richard was definitely in trouble. Soon after, the police arrived too. After understanding the situation, the police came back to the apartment with us. We immediately saw the place had been ransacked, with traces of blood visible. They found a phone under the coffee table. The last call made was to fake Harrison. After Ethan and I gave our statements, the police were still collecting evidence at my place, so I was planning to stay at his house. Just then, one of the officers called me over, his expression complicated. "Miss Sterling, I have to tell you something. Please prepare yourself." I already had a sinking feeling about what he'd say. "We sent officers to your father's house, and your father... He was stabbed over a dozen times. He died at the scene." I glanced at Ethan, who stepped forward to ask, "Did you catch the killer?" The officer shook his head, saying they'd only found Richard alone in a pool of blood when they arrived. I put on a grief-stricken expression and gave them an address. When fake Harrison kidnapped me, he got a phone call and mentioned this address afterward. "Maybe you should check it out." This was obviously a lie. The address was from my previous life, where those people had taken me. I had a feeling Richard might have hired the same crew. The next morning, I got another call from the police. Ethan and I rushed to the station, where we unexpectedly ran into Hunter. He was just leaving, giving me an unreadable look before nodding and walking away. At the morgue, I saw Madison's body. She had multiple wounds, but the fatal one was clearly the stab to her heart. She was 2 months pregnant, the investigating officer told me. I was shocked. No wonder fake Harrison had wanted to take her away. The officer continued, explaining that when they'd gone to the address I provided, they'd found the aftermath of a violent confrontation. Several people had died at the scene, including Madison and fake Harrison. One survivor had been rescued and later confessed to being hired to kidnap and eliminate a woman living in a specific apartment building. So the pieces fell into place. Fake Harrison and Madison had kidnapped me for money, but when Madison went to my place to get it, she ran into the people Richard had hired to kill me. Through a twist of fate, she was taken instead. Fake Harrison went to rescue her, and both ended up dead. The police wondered why fake Harrison had gone to Richard first. I suggested he probably figured Richard was most likely behind hiring those men, since Richard would naturally resent me for forcing him out of Sterling Corp. The truth was that fake Harrison didn't know where Madison had been taken, so he could only start by confronting Richard. Maybe they'd fought, or maybe fake Harrison killed him for revenge. Looking at Ethan, I felt overwhelmed by the parallels. Their fate was so similar to ours in the previous life. And Richard, in the end, he still couldn't escape death. So this was karma in action. Evil deeds always bring evil consequences. Walking out of the police station with Ethan, the midday sun was blazing overhead. I looked up at the brilliant light, so bright it hurt to keep my eyes open. The bad guys had all gotten their punishment. Now I was truly alone in the Sterling family. The next second, a slender hand appeared above me, shielding me from that harsh sunlight. I turned to see Ethan beside me, his eyes bright and warm. "I just came out and saw you standing there in a daze. What are you thinking about?" "The police said we're mostly done with statements. We can go home now." I smiled until my eyes crinkled, taking his hand. "Yes. Let's go home." Epilogue 6 months later. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office at Sterling Corp. I set down my coffee and reviewed the quarterly reports spread across my mahogany desk. The company had not only recovered from the scandal but was thriving under my leadership. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Come in." Ethan entered, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, carrying 2 takeout bags from our favorite cafe. Even after all these months, my heart still skipped when he walked into a room. "Thought you might be too busy conquering the business world to eat," he said with that familiar crooked smile. "Very thoughtful of you, Mr. Morrison." I gestured to the small conference table by the window. "Though I'm pretty sure CEOs don't usually deliver lunch personally." He set down the food and moved behind my chair, his hands settling on my shoulders. "This CEO makes exceptions for certain people." His thumbs worked at the tension in my neck, and I closed my eyes, letting myself relax for the first time all morning. "The merger with Harrison Industries is moving smoothly," I murmured. "Hunter's been surprisingly professional to work with." "Probably helps that he respects you now." Ethan's voice carried a note of something I couldn't quite identify. "Not many people can outmaneuver him in business." I turned to face him. "Are you jealous? Should I be?" The question hung in the air between us. Over these months, the line between sibling affection and something deeper had blurred beyond recognition. We lived together, worked together, moved through our days in perfect synchronization, but neither of us had been brave enough to name what this was becoming. "Ethan." I started, then stopped. How do you tell someone who's been your anchor through hell that somewhere along the way, they became everything? He seemed to understand anyway. He always did. "Claire." His voice was soft, serious. "I meant what I said that night at dinner. We're not really family." "We never were." "I know. And I meant it when I said I'd do anything to protect you." "I know that too." He cupped my face in his hands, thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. "Then you know that everything I did, every plan, every scheme, every moment of revenge, it was all for you. Because losing you once nearly destroyed me." My breath caught. "Ethan, I love you, Claire. Not like a brother loves a sister. I love you like a man loves the woman he wants to spend his life with." The confession I'd been waiting for, hoping for, fearing for months was finally out in the open. "Thank God," I whispered, reaching up to pull him down to me. "Because I love you too. And not in a sisterly way either." His lips found mine, gentle at first, then deeper as months of restraint finally broke free. He tasted like coffee and possibilities, like home and adventure all at once. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "So what happens now?" he asked. I smiled, thinking of everything we'd survived, everything we'd overcome, everything we'd built together from the ashes of our previous lives. Now? Now we get to find out what happily ever after looks like. Outside the window, the city sprawled beneath us, our city now, full of opportunities and second chances. We'd taken back everything that was ours and built something even better from it. Some people get one chance at love, at life, at happiness. We'd gotten two. And this time, we weren't letting go. The end.